Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to share content with you to help you make sense of your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. So today I want to talk about intuitive eating. And I'm often surprised when I ask people if they know what intuitive eating is and they say no. On Instagram, I follow a lot of other therapists who are working with body image and food, nutritionists, as well as personal accounts of people who are on their journey to creating a healthy relationship with food. And so my newsfeed is always full of stuff about intuitive eating, which I think has probably led me to a somewhat biased approach so that it's more well known than it actually is. Now, if food has been something that's really chaotic in your life, and you don't even know what a healthy relationship with food looks like, you can't remember or you've never had it, how are you supposed to get there? You know, if we're talking like not dieting, how do you have something to hold on to in order to be able to get to a peaceful place with food and your body? And that's where intuitive eating fills the gap wonderfully. I credit it to my own recovery, and I've seen it work for a lot of other people as well. And so it's something that I share with some of my clients. So intuitive eating is comprised of 10 principles. Now, I tend to use the word intentions instead of principles. I don't know why, for me it's just a language thing. I feel like principles sounds a little bit like morality, like good and bad, you live by your principles, and I don't know. The thing is, I like intentions because you can always reset your intention at any point. So if you have an intention to honor one of the principles of intuitive eating and you realize that you haven't been, you just reset your intention. It's not 10 rules that you either follow or you break. It's an intention, a focus, and a mindset to create something. So let's begin. Number 1 is reject the diet mentality. Now, diet mentality, you may have heard this word before, maybe you haven't, but it's everywhere. And what's diet mentality? So diet mentality is the belief that we need to earn our food. It's the belief that we should always be trying to eat in a bit of a deficit, that eating more than we need is bad, eating when we're not hungry is bad, eating certain foods at certain times is bad. Just diet mentality can be so benign. It can be like going out for dinner with your friends and someone says, oh, I'm gonna have a dessert today because I've been good today. Or when somebody proudly tells you what they've eaten today, and it's not much, and that's some kind of accomplishment. This is everywhere. This kind of mindset is so ingrained into certainly culture here in the UK, Western culture, and maybe more globally as well, certainly more and more. And it gets in the way because diet culture sets us up for rules. It kind of fuels the black and white thinking, which is such a big part of binge eating. You're either being good or you're being bad. It polarizes things. So rejecting the diet mentality, it's making a commitment not to diet. It might sound quite simple, but if this is something that has been ingrained into you, like from when you were just little, it's there, it's right in the fibre of your being. So it can take quite a bit of work to dig out the diet mentality, and it will creep back. So I think that's another thing, people they're a bit hard on themselves because they think it's just, you just reject it once and then you're done. But I think it's this constant having to keep rejecting and rejecting these pressures to conform to this diet mentality that so many people seem to be brainwashed by and stuck in. And number 2, honor your hunger. This is about not letting yourself get too hungry. This is not demonizing hunger. Hunger is good because it's a helpful signal. But hunger that gets left and repeatedly ignored builds. So if you've been hungry for a few weeks because you've just been ignoring your hunger, you could be setting yourself up for several weeks of binging because your body may be full, but the hunger doesn't get satisfied because it's been left to build for too long. So many people, when they come and they start doing the work around binge eating, realize that what they've been telling themselves that they ought to be eating isn't enough food. So how do we know when we're hungry? There can be a few things. I suppose it's really listening and understanding your own body. It might be sort of like discomfort in the stomach. It could be rumbling. Some people get headaches. Some people feel tired. A friend of mine told me the other day she feels cold and then she knows she's hungry. There are so many different signals. And also when the body releases ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, ghrelin can make you think about food. So if you're thinking about food a lot as well, you might be someone who's quite detached from your emotions, but you're having a lot of thoughts about eating, it might be that you're hungry. So we want to honour hunger. Not that we don't want to feel it, we do want to get in touch with it a bit, but we want to honour it, not fear it. So, number 3, make peace with food. This one is one of the most controversial principles or intentions of intuitive eating, because it's about giving yourself unconditional permission to eat, which is terrifying for the binge eater, because the binge eater truly believes that if they gave themselves unconditional permission to eat, that they would just eat everything in sight. But even people who are binging, who seem to be giving themselves permission to binge every day, are not really giving themselves full permission. There's always this thing in their mind, at some point, this needs to stop. There's part of them that's saying that they shouldn't be doing this, that they really need to stop doing this. And all of these things that come in which lead to feelings of guilt. If you're feeling guilty about eating, you're not giving yourself permission. And guilt is one of the number 1 emotional triggers for binge eating. So what this principle does is it protects you from feeling that guilt and therefore protects you from that particular trigger. But this on its own causes some people some problems. And one of the reasons why it's quite difficult for some people is that if you are eating in response to trauma, if you are regularly binging in order to be unconscious and not present in your life, then this principle can be used to continue to enable to use food to do that. Does that make sense? So yes, unconditional permission to eat, but I would want to qualify that with some presence, like not going unconscious with food. So if you were having a craving for, let's say, some sweet food that you felt like you shouldn't be having, to go, okay, well, I have to have it because I'm giving myself unconditional permission to eat, and then you zone out in front of the television and end up having a sugar binge, that is very different to like, no, I can have this, but because I'm aware that something's going on for me around this that might be more than what my body needs, I'm just going to be present with it. I don't know how many times when I was recovering where I had an urge for something sweet and I would say to myself, okay, you can have it, but you got to go and sit at the table with just you and the food. And then I was like, nah, you're all right. Because it wasn't what I wanted it for. I wanted it for something other than the food itself. If you want a food and you're happy to sit down with that food, then it's about wanting that food. If you want the food and the thought of sitting with the food feels really uncomfortable, you want to have it while doing something else, it's probably not about the food. Something else is going on. And I think that's something that often gets missed out with this particular principle of intuitive eating. Principle number 4, challenge the food police. This, I think, really ties in with diet mentality. It's about those rules that are in your head about how you should and how you shouldn't eat. When you think certain foods are bad and you start eating them, there's a part of you that goes, oh crap, I've eaten something that's really bad, better get rid of it. It's what creates that inability to put half a packet of biscuits back in the cupboard, because part of you is saying, this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing it. It's the black and white thinking, tomorrow I'm going to be good, so today I can be really bad. And that just constantly exacerbates the binge restrict cycle. Number 5, respect your fullness. So this is not about stopping eating the moment you're not hungry. It's not about not feeling full. I like to think of it as something as well about enjoying being full, because diet mentality will tell you that you should never really feel full. You can feel not hungry, but to feel full means you obviously have eaten too much. But feeling full is such a part of feeling satisfied, and also quite often when we eat, we're eating with some anticipation of when we're going to eat next. So if we're having lunch at 1, and let's say we know we're not going to be able to eat till 7 p.m, to eat at 1 and stop the moment you're full means you're probably going to be hungry again around 3 or 4 o'clock, which is fine if you have the ability to eat and you want to eat something else then. Great, do it that way if that's what works for you. But if you know that there's going to be this gap, it kind of makes sense to experience fullness, because when we feel full, that's what keeps us going. Like, we have this food in our stomach and that's just going to keep digesting and releasing energy for us over the next few hours. Being full is a wonderful thing, but we respect it. Because with the binging, there's the fullness and then there's the pushing into pain. There's the discomfort, there's the difficulty breathing at times, which is going further than what this is about. This is about respecting fullness, seeing it as a good thing, but learning for you where that sweet spot is, where you feel comfortably full. Number 6. This one is my favourite, and it is discover the satisfaction factor. Satisfaction when we eat is one of the most important things that we need to discover for ourselves, especially if we've had a very difficult relationship with food. What do we all want in life? Quite often we want to feel satisfied in our careers, in our relationships. It's like satisfaction is the holy grail. You win on so many levels. So when you start asking yourself, what do I really want to eat? What am I really going to enjoy and feel good about? Emotionally, psychologically, socially, and physically as well, taking all of it into account. And satisfaction has a moderating effect. So you have hunger and fullness and satisfaction. And those three together, you get your relationship with those three right. And that is the biggest part of the self-regulating, of the ability to be able to self-regulate your appetite and what you eat. Number 7. Maybe the hardest of all for some people, which is to honour your feelings without using food. Now, this is a huge subject which I think is going to need its own video, because I think I get quite frustrated with some of the advice out there about this. You know, if you are feeling stressed, have a bubble bath or go for a walk or do this or do that. And I think what this stage might involve for some people is we're trying to change our relationship with food, right? And maybe part of that journey is changing our relationship with our emotions. Because emotions generally, the ones that don't feel good, only feel as bad as they do because of what we're telling ourselves about them. So I think there's this social pressure that we should be feeling happy all the time, that we should be positive all the time. And when we're not those things, something's terribly wrong. We have this really difficult relationship with not feeling good. And there's so much judgment that can come around not feeling good as well. So when we really start to understand what not feeling good is for us and how to even tolerate those feelings, because a lot of the advice out there is just finding other ways to distract yourself from your feelings. But I think feelings are there for a reason. They have a really important job. Their job is to get your attention. So when we're willing to just sit with our emotions for a couple of minutes, really sit and listen, my experience has been that they change and they morph into something else. It's the resistance and the way that we talk to ourselves about what we're experiencing, the stories and the meaning that we put onto what is just, I say just, that's a bit reductive, but what is a sensation in the body. So I think that this principle is a big one for a lot of people, and it really involves connecting with your emotions and finding out how to tolerate them and how to soothe them. We need to ideally be able to do both, or express them. It's like if you're feeling angry, do you have to go and release that anger? Not necessarily. I think sometimes it's about tolerating it and just waiting to see what happens to it before we decide about action. And other times it's about going and doing something with the emotions. So this, I think, is quite a complex one that is often oversimplified. Number 8, respect your body. This is not about liking your body. This is not about loving your body. This is just about recognizing that your body is an instrument that works tirelessly for you day and night. And I think the respect of your body is just, if we don't respect somebody or something, we're going to treat them differently. We're probably not going to treat them as well as someone that we have a lot of respect for. And so it's about that. It's about finding a way to look at our bodies and go, okay, maybe I'm not comfortable with this, maybe I'm not comfortable with that, but what does my body do for me? And can I treat it with the respect that it deserves? A lot of people get angry with their bodies as if it's their bodies that have caused something. Somehow their bodies have betrayed them. And so this is really about making some peace with your body. There's some acceptance, I think, in this as well, but I don't think it's necessarily about accepting all, and it's not about how your body looks. It's about your attitude towards your body and deciding to cultivate an attitude of respect. And so number 9 is joyful movement. Exercise. I think sometimes they use the word exercise, sometimes they say joyful movement. I'm not keen on using the word exercise, because I think it has so many connotations with diet, weight loss, burning calories, that kind of thing. But we have these bodies that want to move. Our bodies do not do well, and our minds don't do well when our bodies are still for long periods of time. It just doesn't feel good. So it's about finding a way to move your body that you enjoy and shifting your attitude from like exercise and burning fuel and earning food to like, I have a body that can move and wants to move, because then it functions better and I feel better in it. So that's number 9. And number 10 is gentle nutrition. Gentle nutrition. Now there's a reason why this is number 10 and why it's last. Because nutrition can be, again, just so tied in with like diet mentality, food rules, these good, these bad foods, all these kinds of things. And it's about, we do have some nutritional knowledge. We are fortunate, in some ways unfortunate, to have as much nutritional knowledge as we currently do. And for me, like when people are struggling with binge eating, and when they're struggling with eating foods that don't have a particular variety of nutrients, sometimes it's about adding stuff in. People often think, well, if I'm eating more of this stuff, then I have to eat more of that, less of that stuff. And it's not. It's about taking into consideration, maybe it ties in with like respect to your body as well. We know that we have bodies that need nutrients. They need fiber, they need vitamins, they need macronutrients, micronutrients, all those kinds of things. And we do well to just give our bodies variety. They thrive on variety. So that's intuitive eating. I would be particularly intrigued to hear from you if you haven't heard of intuitive eating before, and to know what your first impressions are about it. And of course, if intuitive eating has helped you, or if you have a lot of problems with intuitive eating, or perhaps you think intuitive eating doesn't work. I've had a couple of like really respectful debates online with other people about whether intuitive eating can work for binge eating. And I think that's really interesting, and I think it's really important that we all respect each other's stance on here. No one can tell us how we should be eating, and that's something that we have to figure out for ourselves. But this, I think, just provides a really lovely framework. It takes away the black and white thinking, it takes away the being good or the bad, and it starts to develop new ways of thinking, feeling, approaching, challenges our attitudes, all of these kinds of things that I just think are really helpful for someone who wants to get in a place where they have a good relationship with food, and where they feel comfortable with food, and they feel like they're nourishing their bodies but enjoying everything that food has to offer. So I'm going to close the video here. Go well, and namaste.